All right, Mr. Kammer,
Present.
Ms. Matson,
Present.
Representative Mueller,
Present.
Ms. Robertus.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Williamson.
Present.
All right, Madam Chair, 5 of the 5 members are present. A quorum is present.
All right, fantastic. Well, I know with our agenda, the next item is normally to go over our minutes to be adapted. Beforehand, just because of everything going on in our country and what yesterday represented, I want to just take this, if it's okay, just a few minutes to give us all space to just reflect on yesterday. Just if there's anything you want to just say in this space, anything that you were reminded of or learned, just want to give opportunity for that. And I can start. Is when you think about the continuum with like denial and polarization, minimalization, acceptance and adaptation, to think of America as a country, as a society, just how much further we could be just with respecting the humanity. And I know I was seeing how someone was saying, like, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, how a few years ago it seemed like we were getting closer to it, and now it seems like we are further back. And I beg to differ. I think sometimes things has to get worse before it can get better. And I'm just hopeful. I've just forever hope in humanity, and just really appreciate you all and all that you do, and just grateful. So if anyone else wants to give her a smile or reflection, please feel free to do so.
I just want to say thanks for sharing that. I spent some time yesterday. NPR does a really great day on their talk radio, featuring the day and different speakers and artists and poetry, and listening to that. And as a white female, I'll just note that I'll continue to try to do better. I heard one speaker talk about not do better. I don't love the way I just said that, but this one speaker talked about how at times we can languish in comfort zones, and that's not necessarily the most helpful place to be right now as an ally. And so I'm just making a commitment to try not to do that and speak out more frequently.
That's beautiful. Anyone else?
Yeah, one of the things that struck me yesterday is just the reminder that it's not just a day. It's easy to post a quote on Facebook or social media or whatever a person uses, but one of my favorite ones I saw is, whatever we post today, let it be a reflection of our actions for the next 364 days, and beyond. So I think it's just important that our actions are consistent with, what we're saying. And if we truly commit to making the world better, let our actions be seen, let our voices be heard, and not just on a single day, but certainly every day. So thank you for taking some time to do this today.
Thank you all. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll add just a couple of things that I really thought about yesterday. And one is just the great work that Loretta Scott King did also. And so just uplifting her voice as well. And then thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. and how much he was maybe unpopular at the time, or said things or did things that were unpopular, but they were the right thing to do. And so just trying to keep drawing on that. What's the right thing to do, even if they aren't always the most popular, or, you've got a fraction of people really fighting against something, but it's still the right thing to do. So just as a legislator, that's important for me to try to draw on that message as well. But again, don't want to forget what Loretta Scott King also brought to us with her advocacy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else? And else, LLC, you all are included. Anyone else? If not, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And even just thank you for what you feel and you didn't feel, I won't say what you felt, but if you feel something and just didn't really know if to share it today or not, still thank you for feeling that. Again, it's humanity. So thank you. We can move on unless someone is like, wait a minute. Okay. So with adoption of the minutes, I can declare them as approved unless someone opposes to the minutes, our January 10th meeting minutes. And it seems like I caught myself having it on my grid view. So Mr. Vogel, if I'm missing anything, please let me know. But it seems that there are no objections, so therefore I declare the minutes as approved. All righty. And so then we'll move into our discussion. This is just where we'll take a deeper dive in the data that the first data set that had been provided, as well as some numbers that were put together with the assistance of our Professor Kramer, Member Kramer, and what Mr. Vogel has been duteous to prepare for us. I just want to open up that discussion now. And I do want to just say, looking at these numbers, looking at this data, it's one thing for what's apparent to you, but then when you can see the evidence, it's, for me personally, it's very triggering. I just want to be very transparent with that. We can open it up here now. Mr. Vogel, was there anything that you wanted to, I kind of have you to go forth. If there's any explanation that you want to give to the documents that you provided to us, please feel free to do so at this time.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I think I noted on my emails late last week, DHS hasn't yet provided us a PDF with data privacy redactions. So that's why I'm not displaying anything on my screen. Apologies for that. But you should have received an Excel spreadsheet where I entered all the data from that PDF. And I think, let me know if you catch any typos. I've already found one, but I corrected it. And then I used that data to create the spreadsheet that I sent to you late Friday. The one going over percentage percentage of cases disqualified by race. So what I did there essentially is the DHS data hones into greater and greater detail. So by the time we're getting to, say, table 8 to 10, that's looking at the number of cases considered and the number of cases disqualified, respectively, for tables 8 and 10 by a wide array of provider types / programs. So essentially what I did is I just divided table 10 by table 8, or table 8 by table 10. Yes. And converted that to a percentage. And so those are the percentages that you'll see over on the right of all of those tables there. In the case of tables 8 and 10, I split it up by 2018 and 2019. And if you look at those percentages on the right there, those are obviously just raw percentages from that data. So to really get a good picture, what we'd want to do then is compare them to the Minnesota population. But we can see some very significant disparities, racial disparities in outcome here. So, for example, I think in my email I singled out substance use disorder treatment. Approximately a quarter of Native American applicants for positions under that program were disqualified. Now, why that's the case is another matter, but simply that disparity in outcome really stands out. There are also very large percentages at other points in this table, although they're, for example, I'm looking at actually Native American applicants under the DHS educational program in 2019, but there some of that emerges from very small numbers. So, for example, well, not too small in this case. So 9 cases disqualified there out of 20 cases of applicants. So just as a caution, with this data, always make sure that it's not just, say, one person being disqualified out of 2 applicants and therefore 50%, but where there are relatively large numbers here, as in the case of substance use disorder treatment, I think this might be useful data to hang a discussion on. Obviously, I defer to the members what they want to discuss, and I don't know. Sorry to single you out, but Professor Kammer, this is kind of your speed. So correct me if I'm going out on a wild statistical branch here. But yeah, that's sort of what I've got. And hopefully, as we hone in on this data, we might want to bring in Minnesota population data, like from the census, Minnesota arrest or incarceration data, just generally get a good picture of what's going on here.
I had one question. Is there a reason why the tables couldn't be labeled with what they are? I know you put it up in a note box, but rather than the label being table 1, maybe the label could be distinct counted determinations, but you know what I mean? So that you had an idea of what you were toggling to when you were.
Ms. Mattson, Madam Chair, yeah, apologies for that. That was pretty much me being lazy about copy pasting and trying to get it done quickly. I can absolutely update this spreadsheet with more user-friendly titles and send that to you.
If this is lazy, I'm not sure we share the same view of what lazy is. This is certainly not lazy by any means. So anyway, that was just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Madsen. Thank you, Mr. Vogel. All right, any other discussion off of what we've received thus far? I do want to just reiterate that there has been an ask for the department in the sets that they provide that they can send it in Excel or spreadsheet format. It's a possibility that it can be sent that in the format we're requesting, but we shall see.
Oh, and Madam Chair, I should note, it doesn't look like we have a member of DHS on the call today. Just the members are aware.
Yes, thank you. And if we can make sure to highlight that notation, because from what I understand, and please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, with this legislation or legislative task force, that is a requirement that DHS is present. Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm unaware of specific requirement, although, as you know, the task force has been requesting DHS's presence at specifically these data meetings. But yeah, I should also note that Ms. Robertis' hand is up.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Robertis, please. And if you raise your hand and I don't call on you, please just come off of mute because most likely I don't see you.
No worries. It's thoughtful conversation. So I can wait. I want to just remind people I do have to leave again about 8:27 to make it to my 8:30. But what I would like, and maybe I missed this, but I would really like for DHS to get back to us about what we can share with the larger group, because I think this information, especially how Will you broke it down, is exceptionally important for the other two subgroups who are making recommendations based off of, my guess would be some of this data, right? To indicate and demonstrate some of the disparities we're seeing. And the decision-making process would be very informative for them to go forth in their subcommittees. So the sooner the better, from my perspective, to get this out more widely to the group, even if it's just some of the basic information, maybe not the full report.
Thank you. The hope is that we can anticipate DHS having a presentation over the data sets provided for our next our full legislative task force meeting. That's the hope. A very good point that you make, Member Robertus. All right. Please go ahead.
I just see, I saw Representative Mueller has her hand up, so I will defer and I will put my hand up.
Okay, Representative, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, I did ask them at the full group meeting when they would have those other requests, and I can't recall offhand now what they said. They did give us somewhat of a timeline, I believe. I can't remember what that was exactly. And so I'm wondering if anybody wrote that down or remembers that. And then the other thing is, I'm curious what the other two data sets, because I'm new to this group, I'm curious what the other two requests were specifically. And so I don't know if, like, Will, maybe you could email those to me. That would be great. I'd love to see those as well.
Yes, I actually will defer to Mr. Vogel, because we did strategically send a letter to DHS confirming those dates just for that paper trail. But like I said, I'll refer to Mr. Vogel to give those specifics.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Mueller. So yeah, off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure on this, DHS told us that they'd have the second data set by the end of this week, January 21st. Or I should note that they're hoping to have these data sets, and the next one within 2 weeks of that, which I'm interpreting as by February 4th. So in both cases, Friday. And I can absolutely send you over a copy of the two data requests that the subcommittee has placed with DHS so far.
Would it be appropriate to also send the letter to the representative stating those dates that we sent to DHS?
Apologies, Madam Chair. I was messing with my email. Do you mean the email I sent to Mr. Zempel after the task force meeting?
Yes.
Absolutely. I can just forward that to you, Representative Mueller, and I'll attach the two documents to that email.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Representative, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you so much.
All right, member. And I was saying Kramer. I think I have that wrong. Is it Professor Kammer?
Yep, Kammer is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My apologies. I'm really bad with names, so
You're good.
please correct me at any time.
You're good.
Thank you.
So one of my questions, looking at the data, the wrap-back numbers, they're included in the total, grand total, Will?
There we go. Sorry, mute button problems. Mr. Kammer, I believe so. I should also note that, and one can refer to the PDF that DHS provided for this note, but the grand totals are grand totals of cases, not of individuals. So sorry, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head which way they don't add up, but they don't necessarily add up to the.
But I mean, just, one of my thoughts is if in wrap back situations, I think the assumption is that they'll likely would be disqualifications, when you look at the overall number. So I wonder if when we're looking holistically, if it makes sense to parcel those out. Am I making sense? Because I think otherwise they might be swaying the overall numbers, but it's not a big deal, because I think if we're just primarily focusing on looking where the greatest disparities are, we still have that. So
Mr. Kammer, Madam Chair, sorry, if I might step in, it looks, so I'm looking at table 9 from the DHS data, which is which is where eligibility was found. And yeah, there are a very few wrapbacks where I assume from the definition of that an arrest was made, but DHS determined that it wasn't under their preponderance of evidence standards, that didn't meet the crime or conduct. But that's a very rare case. And in fact, there weren't any wrapback eligibility determinations in 2019. So it looks like all the wrapbacks, basically, we can assume are disqualifications.
Okay, I think at this point, I know, Member Roberta's will be heading out here soon. Just want to make sure to inform the subcommittee that Mr. Vogel and I, and as well as Chair Geffen and Vice Chair Evans, and also Chair, please help me, Mr. Vogel.
Chair Dawson, Madam Chair.
Dawson, I kept wanting to say Davin. Dawson, we have begun to start to meet offline, just so that we can make sure that we are I'm trying to say the word. We're working together. Well, we are working together, but what my point is, in regards to the requests that we're making with DHS, we want to make sure we're as strategic as possible, so that, DHS isn't getting similar requests in from different points, because we want to make sure, we want to caution ourselves and make sure we're not giving any room to excuses, just in layman's terms, really. So I did want to just make sure the members knew that. And then also, we'll just stay duteous in regards to making sure that what is being said to be done, that we're following up on it and trying to help it across the finish line, if you will, or in this case, across what we've requested that we can actually receive it. So if there was nothing more, if our minds are as clear as can be regarding this data, I do want to open up if there's any other questions. If not, we can move to prepare to adjourn.
I have a process question, so in looking where we might see some of these disparities, what are our next steps in digging into that? Is that our role to ask further questions, so, just looking at, 2019 and looking at some of these areas where, I'll just say, unlicensed consumer, directed community support, and where we see some of these higher percentages and so forth. What are our next steps? Are we waiting for DHS to present and give us more data? Should we be formulating questions to dig deeper and understand, why some of these disparities exist? And if so, when do we envision doing that? Is that after the DHS presentation? I just, want to get a sense of next steps.
Thank you so much. That's a very valid question to ask. So with this particular subcommittee, yes, not only are we requesting and gathering the data, but we're also taking that deeper dive so that when it is going to the fuller task force, hopefully a lot of those preliminary or initial questions we can get to the bottom of, so that once the presentation is made, we're covering that. I also understand that after DHS does their presentation, there will still be other questions that can come up. So I look at this data subcommittee as one to take those deeper dives, to, in a sense, prepare this data, prepare this evidence as much as it can be, so that when we're making these recommendations, we're able to make them in a manner that sets up the evidence that we're able to provide. So with that, if there, the hope is that we are kind of creating our questions now, and that will be a continual process throughout the year. Did that answer your question, Member Kammer?
I think so. So if we're if we have questions, I'm wondering, do we want to go through the spreadsheets that Mr. Vogel created anymore and see if there's more questions, or again, I'm wondering, are we saying it might be more helpful to wait until DHS presents and ask them questions at that time? I just want to make sure I understand, so I'm holding my questions for the right time and such.
So this is something, we do have the time on this morning to go through those questions. I trust and know that with all of us, the questions that we have are necessary and needed. So we can definitely go over them to see if that kind of, like a brainstorming session, if you will, see if that triggers even more questions to have prepared for when DHS is present. We could do that. Otherwise, like I said, I know that all of us here were very passionate about this work and our convictions and what we know and our expertise. That I wouldn't necessarily say that we would need to go over them to see if they're appropriate or if they're the right questions. I trust all of your expertise here. Member Madsen, was there something that you were going to say?
Sorry, I'm juggling multiple calls here, so I'm trying to be cognizant of who's on mute and who's not.
No.
No, I was just going to ask, is the second data set, did that include, because here we have disqualifications, but what about matching up percentage of people that have requested a set aside, to see if those numbers, and I'm thinking if some of these numbers could be together to paint a picture, that would be helpful if we're going to create a narrative or a presentation, and happy to help along those lines if that's needed too.
That, I know, and Mr. Vogel, you can please step in as well, but I know in regards to this actual subcommittee's on data, with us actually creating a presentation, we hadn't discussed that part. It would be nice for us to do one of our own at this point, more so looking at a presentation from DHS of the data sets that they're providing. However, you make a very good point that we can just kind of start preparing in regards to our own presentation that we can gather. Mr. Vogel, yes, please.
Madam Chair, I think that if you don't mind, I think it might be a good idea for me to share my screen and show what data the group requested as the initial data set request. And I'm just going to keep talking as I do that. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't believe DHS has told us what's going to be in the second and third data sets, just that all three together will answer the questions in this data request I'm displaying on my screen right now. So since the first data set was disaggregating 2018 and 2019 data by race, I would assume we'll see other disaggregated data by gender, for example, going forward. But yeah, I guess to sort of talk through this and talk through answering Ms. Matson's question. The disaggregated data request is just a request for just quote disaggregated data, which if DHS is interpreting that as disaggregating all of their cases the way they are in the first data set they provided, I don't know if they'd get into disaggregated process data for a specific point in the process, like the set aside request. So let's see. Requests about permanent disqualifications, the child foster care program. I apologize, I don't have all this memorized off the top of my head. And then process/qualitative data, but that doesn't really get into the to disaggregating set aside requests by anything. So it sounds like if that's something that the group is interested in, that might be appropriate for a new request for DHS. I should note, however, that as DHS has told us, their staff is stretched really thin, and not that should dissuade the group from putting in whatever requests they do, but just in terms of prioritization, my understanding is DHS is prioritizing working on this data request. And after that, the data requests that the group placed with DHS last week on oh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Just a moment, let me pull that up. Yes. Apologies, Madam Chair, it's just coming up. Oh, yes, on the timeliness of the background study reconsideration process. 8 a.m. So I should just note that a further data request, I'm sure they'll try to answer without wanting to speak for DHS. Just I think the members should be aware that given their constraints, they may prioritize these other requests before that.
Just to note, it looks like the written request has disaggregated data listed twice.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think that was from the document that the members edited in the first meeting. Just a moment. Let me look around and I'll get back to you.
And Professor, I just want to go back to Professor Kammer. Do you mind just sharing some of those initial questions that you have? I do want to see if it kind of scratches scratches some of us in regards to adding to the questions that we have.
Yeah, some of the things as I look through, for instance, when I look at the 2019 data, and I think, Mr. Vogel had indicated some of these as well too, just looking at, some of the percentage of disqualifications, you can take a look at some of the particular program types and you see significantly higher percentages. And then when you take a look at the race categories, there's often, a couple of races that are particularly disproportionate. So my question going through some of those is if DHS has any observations as to why, for instance, is there anything they know about, the applicant pool, and just trying to get a better glimpse into the whys of the data rather than just the data as a whole, and trying to understand the story. Just looking at some of these, and I get it's not just percentages. We have to take a look at the total number of applicants and so forth too, to make sure that we're looking at something of some significance. But just looking at substance use disorder treatment, for instance, when we take a look at percentage of the total disqualifications, they're in the area, African American category 10.78, Asian or Pacific Islander. Maybe I shouldn't be reading these out since they're not. We don't know we have permission, but just some of the categories going through. I'll say the column for Native Americans is is just significantly high. So I'm just curious to know more about that. And I don't know if it's helpful to try to get them some of these particular subsets in advance to say we're curious about this, to allow them to dig a little bit deeper to try to provide a better explanation. Or I don't know if they'll say, we don't know, all we have is the data. So I just, I'm curious in that regard, but I want to know more. So, yeah.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. Just especially in regards to, you know, I have heard I've heard some objections to data requested in regards to like the accountability piece or administrative reviews, things of that nature, more so to see if there's certain patterns. And I have heard where there's been certain data that just has not been collected, but the why, getting down to the why, and then for me personally is more so, what have you done about it? And if you're not even looking at what the why is, you definitely aren't looking at what you're going to do about it, which is very problematic. All right. Was there any other discussion?
Madam Chair, just to finish getting back to you, it does look like disaggregated data was put twice on that document. If you'd like, I could go back and rewatch that meeting and see how that happened. I'm sure it was, you know, a typo of some nature, but DHS aren't robots. It's not like they're gonna, you know, work twice on this and, you know, send us 2 data sets. So I think it should be fine. Apologies for not catching that and editing it out.
Yeah, no, and I know we all looked at the form as well. I think it was maybe just a copy paste because we were kind of doing it all together. And so my apologies that I didn't notice it beforehand. So just wanted to just say, wait, is it on there twice? So thank you for double checking that. All right.
And Madam Chair, Representative Muller's hand is up.
Please, Representative Muller.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions. The first one is, I was curious why the unknown other category seems so high. That was a pretty large percentage, and I don't know if anybody here can answer that question or if that's a question for DHS. And then my other question is, are there other entities like some of the employer organizations that we could be requesting their data on for some of these things? Didn't know if we have to rely solely on DHS, or are there other places we can go for some of this information?
That was a very good point. Mr. Muller, what is, because I know DHS is primarily the only source that we're requesting data from. Is that something that we can do as far as you know?
Madam Chair, sorry, were you addressing me or Representative Muller?
I kind of added, I kind of caught along. I jumped on the ride with Representative Muller's question. Yeah, is that something that we can do?
Madam Chair, as far as I'm aware, the data subcommittee's responsibility is simply to gather data, quantitative or qualitative. So I don't think that's limited to DHS. For example, there's the research I'm doing comparing the states outside of Minnesota, which I will provide an update on at some point. Thank you for your patience. But that would be non-DHS information that the data subcommittee is gathering. So as far as I'm aware, the data subcommittee absolutely could request data from any entity it wants to.
You know, that would be something, you know, let's think about that. I want to chew on that for a little bit of what would make the most sense, because like with the with the data that we're receiving, I know it's not giving any specifics as far as different organizations or whatnot. So I wonder, how would we be able to pull that information to then decide on which organizations we want to do those data requests with? Would anyone know that?
Madam Chair, Ms. Mattson's hand is up.
Please.
Madam Chair, thank you. We are a state association of long-term care providers. So the DHS section on here, we've got nursing home, boarding care, home and community-based services. I would say any data that we would have regarding background studies would be qualitative, perhaps, you know, more providing context and narrative. Because once we get a disqualification, we generally move on to the next candidate and don't really keep good data regarding that. But I think I've already reached out to kind of a little handful of our providers to say, what stories do we have? Workforce is such a crisis for us that when people are disqualified, you know, we have a vested interest in making sure that they're disqualified for good reasons. We want them to work as well. We certainly want to protect our vulnerable people that we're caring for. So we have to balance that, but that's what this is, right? That's what our charge is on this task force. So, you know, if you are looking for connection to providers, we can certainly get you that, but probably more on the narrative side, the context setting side.
Yeah, I think with this, you know, because there isn't a one and done answer to this. This is a both and. So I think that would be very helpful, Member Mattson, if you can do that. And if anyone else knows of process or how to get how to request that information, I think that will help overall in regards to you know, our presentation that we would do as a subcommittee regarding recommendations that we suggest. So yes, please. Yes, I think that's a great point that we really hadn't discussed beforehand. So thank you. And thank you, Representative. Anyone else? Let's see here.
Can I ask a question from the meeting on Friday?
Please.
Did I understand correctly that DHS is still planning to hire the additional position, or not? I'll be honest, I'm confused, and I was trying to go back and think from prior meeting, but can I ask what others' understanding was based from the meeting on Friday?
My understanding is the position is posted in a queue, but it's unlikely that they'll receive any candidates.
Got it.
At least that was the framing that was given.
So it's posted, but it's just unlikely it'll ever get filled.
It didn't sound like it was posted yet. It sounded like it was in
or-
a queue to be posted.
Queue to be posted. Okay. Because I thought from a prior meeting there was discussion that there's hesitance because by the time they'd get it posted and get someone trained and such like that, it just they said it was just unrealistic. So I didn't know if I should have a little more optimism or not. But what I'm hearing is probably not be optimistic that they'll even get it posted or filled. So
It sounds like part-time temporary might be a hard kind of
hard sell.
attraction point. Yeah.
Can appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it seemed like that he had mentioned even just in one of our subcommittee meetings that I thought that he said that they had posted it, but the amount of applicants that they received was not to their satisfaction.
Yes, I heard that as well. And then I heard that they were going to post it again.
So that can be something that we can make sure, a question we can have when they're present again. Would it be helpful? I'm just to the point that Member Cameron had made. I wonder if it would be helpful, because I know we keep getting this this pushback in regards to written requests. So I wonder if it would be helpful for us to just gather together some of the questions that have come up on today, for us to then send it to DHS, just so that they can kind of have a heads up, because we really want the questions to be answered. We don't want to stump them, in a sense. We really want answers. So do you all think that would be helpful today for us to just kind of formulate some questions to submit to DHS? Because we got roughly about 10 more minutes. What is everyone's thought on that?
Madam Chair, I think that would be a good idea, but I also don't want to hold up the other, like, I want to sort of prioritize so that we still get the other data we've requested. And maybe it's like we come up with a list of questions that says, like, we will be, we'll be asking you this, we want answers to this, like maybe once we either have all the data, or I just don't want to like hold up them producing the other things that we need. And so just trying to figure out the right way to do that.
A very good point. So what if we, Mr. Vogel, I'm a look to you here. Is it possible to list the questions that have been raised on today, and we'll just have it as a working document? And then that way we can make sure that we let DHS know. Our hopes is that the questions on that document can be answered, or attempted to be answered at least, by our legislative task force, our full legislative task force meeting in February.
Madam Chair, yes, I could type up the notes I've handwritten here and go over the recording and make sure I didn't miss anything. To have some notes on the questions that were informally asked and just send them over to DHS. So, for example, what the timeline is, or what the criteria are for the data subcommittee to share the DHS data with the larger group. I know that came up. What the story is with some of these disparities, those sort of questions. I did have a question of my own, and I should note that Ms. Madsen's hand is up, just so I don't forget to note that, but when I get done talking. But is the group interested in placing a formal data request on disaggregated data for people seeking or not seeking the set-aside process, or is that something that the group would like to prioritize other things? Or would the group like to prioritize analyzing the data that they've already requested?
So, if Member Matson can please go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that would be important to request that data point, because I think we need it for data analysis purposes. But as far as the level of questions, I'd rather spend some time analyzing the data to know what we know, so we can ask like a series of kind of pointed questions. And so I agree with Chair Williamson, your point of I'd like to have a document for us to know what we're thinking, but maybe it's not ready yet for prime time, ready for DHS until we kind of have some more analysis points. But if we didn't ask about the set aside, I think that's absolutely vital to add additional context to these numbers.
Yes, and thank you, Member Masson. Yes, so Will, to answer the question, yes, we do want to submit that request. And then, yeah, I would like to clarify in regards to the working document on the questions, to our representative's point. We would not be submitting that to DHS at this time. We're just getting it together just to have the questions kind of collected. And then we can decide when would be a good time to actually submit the questions to DHS.
Thank you for the clarification, Madam Chair, and I'll get all that set up.
All right, fantastic. All right, and two, I know you're going to go back over the recording. I do want to make sure that we're looking at yeah, with hearing the story and finding out the why, but then also what has been done as a result of. All right. If there were no further questions, I'm just wondering why I cannot pull up the grid view to see all of you. All right. Well, if there was no further questions, we can prepare to adjourn here. I just want to check one thing.
Madam Chair, Ms. Matson, I see your hand is still up. Okay. Yep. Sorry, I was singling you
my
out.
apologies.
Now we want to make sure. All right. Well, with that, thank you all so much. I really appreciate these early morning meetings. It's 8 o'clock time, but again, I just know that most of us come 9 o'clock, it gets really crazy. So just knew that 8 o'clock typically would be a good time to lock us all in. So also just be thinking about once session starts, how frequently we would want to meet. Maybe we can just do bi-monthly, starting in February. So just be kind of thinking about that. What works better, if it's the first and the fourth Mondays, or if Monday is even the best day. Please kind of be thinking about that. As we, towards the end of this month, we'll be having that discussion as well. All righty. Well, I move for us to adjourn unless anyone wants to stay on. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and thank you so much for all that you do and who you are.